Hi, it's Mr Pelargonium here. It's the middle of May and plants are wanting to bloom. So it's time to have a look around my glass house at this time of year to see what's what. Hi, hello there. Well, it's good to be back again. It's a very busy time of year, of course. Lots going on in the greenhouse. We're into May. It's the middle of May. I'm recording this on the 14th of May. One of the problems that I knew I was going to have is room, and everything is getting quite big now. And because I've got so much plants, such as my new regal seedlings that are sort of taking over, I need to get them underneath now. There's plenty of light, so they're not going to come to any harm, but I need to move those out. In order to do that, I've actually had to get all my large growing plants out. At this time of year, the nights are quite short, so the low temperatures, we're still getting night temperatures down to about 5 degrees centigrade, but that is only really for a couple of hours, probably between about 3 and 5 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, they're not going to come to too much harm. This glass house is quite well sheltered and the temperature is dropping down to about 6 degrees, but I certainly wouldn't want it to get too much lower than that, because you then start to give the plants a little bit of shock. That, you know, we can still get one or two reddening leaves, which I've spoken about before. Right, now if anybody looks at my Instagram page from Mr Pelargonium, or my Twitter feed indeed, you'll see I put my large standards outside. I had to do that. They'll be getting huge. I wasn't going to be able to get them out the door of this glass house soon, so they had to literally go out. But I also wanted to give some space to some of my smaller standards. Indeed, last year's Best in Show at the National, Sammy Brown, is actually just beginning to flower. And there she is, pride of place. She's got her own space now, which is really good. I had this end of the glass house taken up by my really large regal, which is now outside. If you saw the picture on my Instagram page. Now it's starting to bloom, and the one thing that I didn't do with this plant was stop it. I'm actually surprised that it's held out so long, but it is beginning to flower. I don't know that that'll be suitable for show this year, because I think the bulk of the bloom will be over. Now, the very interesting scenario is that a number of my zonals, which I stopped at around 16 weeks, are actually beginning to bud up. And I'm actually shocked. One or two, you know, for instance, this one here, this is Gosbrook Susanna, which I've had a lot of success with over time. This is actually starting to throw bud. Now, I have actually been misting a number of these plants just to clean the leaves down before the blooms come. There's a little plant, a dwarf plant, Shrivenham Star, and a number of these I've just begun to mist. I'll just throw in a little bit of a video that I just did this afternoon. Because it's the last chance really that I've got to give the leaves a clean down. One of the problems with living where we are, as I say, it's like a bit of a building site. There's little bits of dust and sand flying about. But I've given these a good clean. They've come out very nicely, actually. They're really clean now. But it's important to give them a dust down, because it is the last chance before any blooms really get developing. But this one, interestingly, as well as one or two others, are actually starting throwing bud. And I'm actually really surprised, because being stopped at 16 weeks, this is a double. I'm actually surprised that this is throwing bud, because every single tip was done So I will probably, with 5.5 weeks now left to show, I will leave that now to grow on and throw bud, and we'll make decisions at 3 weeks as to what I keep and what I don't. Now over this side we can see this is a Stella. This is one of my Robin Louises, but this is the classic example of what is going on at the moment. Because of the diverse conditions, the fact that we're still getting quite cold nights, we're still getting in these reddening of the leaves, which I will just take that one off. There's not a lot of them. You see there's another one tucked under there. I will get rid of those, and there's not too many of them, thankfully, but you can see one or two. There's one or two there, but again you'll see the buds beginning to break through, and this is, I'm actually really surprised. I thought I was going to really suffer this year with having blooms that will come late, but it's interesting that the zonals, which I thought were going to come late, are actually coming early. Conversely, the regals, and here's an example of one of my good show regals. These, as everybody knows, were stopped in early December. So these were stopped at something like about 27, 28 weeks, which is almost bizarre. I know they had a sort of a period when they were in the dark when we moved, but this is really unusual, and that will be struggling, actually, I would say, to be ready for the national show. It's certainly going to be no good whatsoever for the Bristol show, which I think is a fortnight before that. Yeah, it just goes to show the difference. And if I sort of scan over that way, I've got a number of regals which are certainly no more advanced than I would want them to be, and I'm actually astonished, really, considering that they were stopped in early December. Normally you would be looking at late January, early February, but it's a really good job that I actually did stop them in early December. This one here, there's the odd bud just beginning to come on one or two of these plants, but I'm actually quite shocked that they're holding out so long. It really is bizarre. Now we have got some bloom. These are younger plants. I mean, I have potted this up into a 6-inch pot, but it won't be used for show this year. I've let it grow on. This wasn't stopped, but this is Zophia Pope, a really, really lovely regal, very bold, sort of beetroot, deep sort of beetroot red, if you like, on the white background. Very nice plant. I've actually used that for crossing in the past. This makes a good shape. I think you need to get it relatively young. When it gets a bit older, it can get a little bit straggly, but just in terms of the fact that its leaves tend to yellow a bit more and things like that. But it really is a lovely bloom, and that's Zophia Pope. Right, now as everybody knows, I've been breeding some regals, and I bred a set from Richie using as a parent plant because it makes a really good shape. And I've got a number of blooms just beginning to come, and I'll certainly do a good number of videos over the coming weeks to show you what the blooms are going to be coming through like. This is the set of plants. They're over through here. Now these are going to be moved. They're going to be moved underneath the benches now because we're getting good light under the benches, obviously, at this time of year. And I need this space to reorganise and get my show plants out. And I'll show you how the glasshouse ends up over the next few days. But one or two are just beginning to bud up. Here's a nice example of a bloom that's just coming out. Looks as if it's going to have some red in it. That one actually is one that's crossed with Zophia Pope, interestingly. This one was crossed with one of my Magnum seedlings, which I've never named. I have still got the plant, but that's showing a really, really deep sort of purpley colour, so we'll have to see again how that grows. Got one or two. This has got a red form by the looks of things, so it's going to be very interesting to see how they come, but they're all seedlings from Richie with various crosses that I tried to make. One or two, this one included, which I've spoken about before, I think that has got something different in it, even though it was technically crossed with Elsie Taylor, but I'm not sure what that's coming through as. It seems to me like it's almost got something like some scented in it. It's actually probably of all of these, it's got the least amount of bloom. There's just one bloom beginning to break there, so it's interesting to see how that's going to end up, that one. But it's an unusual, it's very tight. It'd be interesting to see what happens, but most of them have got bud on now, so we'll see how they go over the next month or so. But I am going to have to get these moved. They're going to go in this space under here, under where I've cleared all my large Zonatic plants out, which are now against the house. And I can put these young regals and a lot of these young seedlings. You may remember my young seedlings, which I potted up. They're all growing away. They're all going to have to be moved away, because pride of place now over the next month before the shows is to give the plants some nice elevated headroom, which you can see I've just started doing down the bottom there. Just to give them lots of light, lots of space and lots of growing room. Now in terms of zonals, this is a gorgeous single, and this is Ray Martin. This was named this after my wife's father, who we unfortunately lost a good number of years ago now, but thought it was a good about time he had a plant named after him. And this was released by Fibrex Nursery in their catalogue this year. But it's a lovely, big, heavyweight bloom. Blooms like crazy. Absolutely throws bloom. I haven't done anything really with this, haven't stopped it. But it makes a lovely plant. It's a good dwarf, stays relatively tight because it's got the Shrivenham Star. It's a Shrivenham Star seedling. And I absolutely love it. It's a gorgeous plant and does really well. Right, now people do ask questions via my video channel, and one question that I've had, which I have mentioned in the past, is my compost mix. Now the compost mix that I use these days probably varies marginally from what I used to use, because over the years, I mean, I've been growing pelargoniums seriously for over 25 years now, and realistically compost is important, but I think realistically it's how you develop, grow and feed the plants is what makes the difference in how they grow. Now the growing medium that I use these days is 5 parts of a peat-based compost, 1 part of a fine grit and 1 part perlite. That's the mix that I make up. It's a very light compost because it's just got the peat-based compost as its main constituent. Now I used to add a sort of a John Innes type compost into the mix, but I don't bother with that anymore. I found the variations were very, very small in how the plants grew, and as I said, it's all to do with how you feed them and how you sort of, grow them in terms of watering. Not over watering, conversely not under watering, but it's how you grow them, and more importantly how you feed them with liquid feed is what really makes the difference. Now I've got my mix here, which I brought through from the garage. Now you can see it is a very free-flowing, it's a very light compost. You can grab it together. It does hold, it is just slightly damp. I just mixed this up this afternoon. But there is a grit and a perlite constituent in there, which just gives the plants a nice bit of aeration in there when it begins to dry. It's important that the roots get air. Very, very important that you get air in the compost mix. With the grit and the perlite, that will allow that. But that will also allow suitable drainage. Pelargoniums do not like their roots being soaked for long periods. They can handle it for a short while, but certainly if you're growing plants that you intend to overwinter, you need a compost mix that's going to drain through really quite quickly. Hi, well, that's it for today's episode. I'll be back again very shortly, previewing some of the blooms of my new seedlings as they come through. So we'll have a look at those, and I'll also update you on how my show plants are getting through for both shows next month that I usually attend. So bye for now.